We're recording. So welcome everyone to Mondays with Maddy. We have a great guest with us tonight, Dr. Matthew Murphy. He is the superintendent of the Ramsey Public School District, and he has been since 2012. Before that, he served as the chief school administrator in the Rivervale Public Schools. And prior to becoming a superintendent, he served as the assistant superintendent for curriculum and instruction, director of elementary education, and principal in the Westwood Regional School District. He began his career in Wyckoff, New Jersey as a teacher, a building-based technology coordinator, and a vice principal. Dr. Murphy is also an adjunct professor at Ramapo College, where he teaches in the Educational Leadership Program, which emphasizes the role as a leader has in curriculum and supervision. For the past 4 years, Dr. Murphy has served as president on the West Bergen Board of Trustees, where he works to end harmful stigmas related to mental illnesses and seeking resources for them. Dr. Murphy earned his doctorate and professional diploma from Fordham University. He earned a Master's of Science Technology in Education from Long Island University and a bachelor's degree in elementary education from the University of Rhode Island. So with that, I welcome you, Dr. Murphy. Thank you so much for being here tonight. That's a pretty impressive bio.
Well, thank you very much. I think you're probably the only one who's impressed by it, but I can't even get my mom to call me Dr. Murphy because it's my brother-in-law is the real doctor in the family. He's the orthopedic surgeon who makes all the money.
Yours counts too, don't worry. Okay, so welcome to Mondays with Maddy. We're here to talk about mental health, obviously, and you run the Ramsey School District. You're superintendent, so you have experience with, kids, teenagers, the high school students who are transitioning into college, as well as being part of the West Bergen Mental Health Board. So you definitely have some experience in there. So with that, if you don't mind, we'll get started. I'll ask you some questions. How does that sound?
That sounds terrific.
Okay, great. So tell me just a little bit about yourself and your role as superintendent.
Fabulous. Thank you. Well, my wife and I live in Ridgewood. We have 2 children, a soon-to-be graduating high schooler, Mia, and a older daughter, Madison, who will be graduating Quinnipiac College. This is my 9th year, as you mentioned in the bio. And before that, I was the superintendent in Rivervale. And it's a great job. It's a challenging job. You never know what tomorrow brings you. But I've really enjoyed it because I think it's a noble profession, education. And now more than ever, I think public education is the great equalizer in this country. I think it has the ability to uplift people and make a difference in their lives. So I like the challenge, and I've really enjoyed my time in Ramsey.
Wonderful. So as well as being superintendent, you also serve on the board for West Bergen Mental Health Care. Tell us a little bit about that as well and why it's so important to you.
Well, thank you. West Bergen is one of the largest not-for-profit provider of mental health services in Bergen County. It's been here in Ridgewood for decades. I joined the board about 7 years ago, and now I have the honor of serving as the board president. And really, West Bergen has 3 distinct kind of missions. One is the counseling mission. We have a office, ironically, in Ramsey for youth and children. And we also provide housing for those in Asperger's and other disabilities. And we provide a day program for those adults who suffer from a mental health illness. And it's a labor of love for me. I know that West Bergen has served many families in the area, including my own families in Ramsey. And I was really, I was struck by their mission years ago as a superintendent when I needed help in the district, and they sold me on their approach. And it's really very satisfying to give back to Bergen County and to Ridgewood and Ramsey.
Yeah.
Now more than ever, we need these not-for-profit mental health providers, because as you know, there's a long wait to get services, and our insurance companies aren't helping us. So their mission, in which they really try to help everyone, is very appealing to me.
Yeah. Yeah, they are. They're a great organization. A lot of people probably don't know this, but after Madison passed away, we actually went there as a family for counseling, and some of the members of my family have continued going there. So they're really wonderful, and they do great things. So, in the mental health world, in general, we talk a lot about stigma and how we can end the stigma that's associated with mental illness. What are some ways that you have worked to help end the stigma in Ramsey?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it really is one of the biggest impediments for us to get mental health accepted in the mainstream, so to speak. So we've done a lot as a community, as in a school district. So we have the Ramsey Stigma-Free Committee on the town level, which I'm a part of. And then we also have a school district Ramsey Stigma-Free Committee, and they oftentimes overlap, but they don't necessarily always overlap in the initiatives. So on the town level, we're very visible at community events. The mayor and I have gone to speak to houses of worship, to the Rotary, to the Chamber of Commerce, just to speak about what mental health illness is and what it's not, and to get the word out there about the resources that are out there. And then in the district, we've done a number of things. One is we're very visible at the events, the school events. So we always have a stigma-free table and information for people to just casually stop by and get it. We have a mental health awareness day in May, in which we have age-appropriate, developmentally appropriate activities ranging from K through 12, including guest speakers and presentations. We do a stigma-free walk and talkathon, which is we invite the community. It's somewhat like a rally to walk the track.
Yeah.
There's no fundraising involved in it, but it's a chance for us to come together as a community and really talk about or show solidarity with each other. And I know there are a lot of 5Ks and walks. This is a little bit more informal, where we invite the children to walk with us. And it's just a way for us to come together as a community. So we have events such as Wear Green, a green out day, both on the athletic fields and in our schools. But most importantly, we talk about it all the time, 24 hours, 7 days a week. I'm active on social media and so forth. And it's a way, and I do that not to annoy my friends who follow me on social media, but it's a way to break down the stigma in our community. And it's paid off. I can tell you it's paid off. Families, there's not a week that doesn't go by that a family, a staff member, or a resident doesn't call up and say, I need help. And that's way beyond what I ever thought we could accomplish when we started this work. We have staff members coming to me and say, I never told anyone this, but I suffer from depression. People think I'm moody or I'm happy. And I wanted you to know that you've allowed me to say, no, I have an illness now. And along with that, we have community presentations. We call them parent academies. We have rock stars who come and talk to our parents. We've had Kate Fagan, who talked about the book, What Made Maddy Run. We had Carly Bushhoven, the executive director of the Madison Hollering Come, speak years ago, and you're coming back November 10th at
Yeah, a
7.
couple weeks.
Couple of weeks. And, we'll have our students there and we'll have our parents there again. So I think it's important for the superintendent, the CEO of the organization, just to not just talk about it once, but to continue the conversation.
Right.
All joking aside, I'm not a counselor, I'm not a mental health professional, but I connect those families or students or staff in need in getting them help. And
Right.
That to me is the most gratifying part of the stigma-free committee work.
Right. That's wonderful. And I think you said it best too. You said it's about having that conversation and starting that conversation. And that's kind of like part of our whole mission, is just have the tough conversation, but that's a way to end that stigma. The more people talk about it and the more people normalize it, the less stigma it's going to have associated with it. So that's wonderful. And I think you're doing great work in Ramsey with
Thank you.
that. So thank you. As you know, obviously Madison was also a high school athlete and eventually a college athlete. And we know that high performing athletes can suffer from mental health crises, such as anxiety, burnout, depression, and others. You currently have a program in Ramsey focusing on the scholar athlete. Can you tell us more about it and what your goals are when it comes to athletes in your district with regards to mental health?
Yeah, it started my interest in this peaked when I got to know Kate Fagan and the book and the story. And, and I got to talk to you. The Murphys don't have athletes in our family. We have scholars, but we don't have scholar athletes unless you count a varsity letter in bowling by my oldest daughter. But that was more about the cheese fries than it was about the score, which is great.
Yeah.
So I was really interested in that intersection and just deep conversations with Kate, who was a Division I high profile scholar athlete herself. And then I just started talking to our coaches, to our athletic director, and to the scholar athletes in Ramsey, just about the pressures that they were feeling and how come they were feeling them and when. So that's when we started looking into putting together presentations, assemblies, resources for the scholar athlete. COVID then happened and we kind of had to shelve that. So we're restarting that. So what we're doing, and we've already started, we're working with different sports psychologists who are meeting with the three groups separately and then together. The coaches, which is a key part, helping them to recognize the signs of what you were talking about, the stress and the anxiety of when they're on overload.
Right.
So the coaches are in one bucket, and then the athletes themselves, helping them, and then the parents. Mm-hmm. So we just started it, but we have a great program lined up. We've done 2 already. We have a great program lined up. And then our hope is to get all 3 of those buckets together.
Right.
And continue that conversation. In Ramsey, we have over 80% of our students who participate in a sport.
Yeah.
Okay. And like our surrounding towns, we have a rigorous high school program. So it's hard to balance being committed to a sport in high school, which is different than being committed to a sport in elementary school. Mm-hmm. I am getting worried that the pressures are starting earlier and earlier with these travel teams and these elite teams. We're seeing the loss of 3 sport athletes sometimes our star athletes only practice or only play one sport. So those are the types of conversations we're having, with our students. But I am interested in seeing how this will move forward. So there's a lot of pressure on young people on any given day.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you combine it with playing a varsity or JV, doesn't really matter what level,
Right.
sport in high school, it's an enormous amount of pressure.
Yeah. And I think it's so key though that you're doing it in like the three different steps or the three different kind of categories: coaches, parents, and then the athletes themselves. Because, if we just focus on one of those things and not the other two, we're kind of missing a big part of that equation, so getting them all involved and just including them in all of that, I think, is so important. So I haven't heard of anything like that before, any kind of program like that before. So I think it's really wonderful.
Well, thank you. I'm a bit of a risk taker in the superintendent world,
Yeah.
but if you don't try, then you're just letting the problem continue.
Right.
I think we have blind spots, and that's why it's really important that we talk about those three different buckets, right? As a parent, you can have a blind spot and you just don't know it.
Right. Like no fault of your own. You just, it's just there. But yeah, that makes total sense. So, okay. So another big part of Madison's story, and I think every teenager and even young adult story today, is social media, right? So, what are your thoughts? Yeah. we hear that many people find that social media can be harmful to their mental health, their well-being, but yet it still is so hard to like take a break from it or take a step back from it, so what is your opinion in all of that?
Oh boy, that's a great question. You said you wanted this to be a limited podcast, so I could go on and on about
as we all could.
Right, social media. I'll just add, I do think that the problem is just beyond those groups. I think it's pretty clear to us that adults have an issue with social media. So
yes,
yeah,
should have been said that too. Yes, I mean, it's really everyone nowadays.
Oh yeah. So here's the thing, right? If you would have asked me 10 years ago, or even 8 years ago, my tact with social media would have been, they shouldn't get a phone too early. Mm-hmm. That type of digital citizenship. But that ship has sailed. I don't think there's a child who doesn't have a young, a teenager, a sixth grader, or a fifth grader who doesn't have a phone. And I don't,
or at least an iPad or some sort of screen, right? Some sort of device.
So I don't think it's reasonable, or I would love to say, don't give a phone, don't have social media to a middle schooler, but I don't think that could happen. We can't go back in time in that way, even in my 9 years here, 10 years here. But I will say this, that there is no bigger factor in one's mental health right now than that of social media. Mm-hmm. It is the number one factor in our schools, and I'll explain a little bit more about it. When I grew up, and I'm going to be in my 50s, I'm going to be 54. I grew up in Pearl River, New York, very much in the same type of families that live in Allendale and Ramsey and Ridgewood and so forth. When you were in 7th grade and you didn't get invited to the bar mitzvah, you didn't know about it until the weekend after the bar mitzvah. Mm-hmm. You didn't even have the sweatshirts back then. Right. Right. You just didn't have it. Now, what social media, not just social media, technology has allowed us to do is the minute that invitation hits the mailbox or doesn't hit the mailbox, you know if you've been included or excluded,
Right.
and all the feelings that come along with that in 7th grade
Mm-hmm.
and 8th grade, right? And that's a lesson we all have to learn, is that you're not going to be invited to everything, that you might be
Yeah.
disappointed, you might have your feelings hurt, whether it was realistic or it wasn't realistic. Well, I didn't really know John. Well, why'd you expect to be invited? I don't know. Right. So this tool has amplified the emotions that are very natural for a young adult. We've always, right? Young adults, even adults, we yearn to be accepted. We yearn to be part of the crowd. We yearn to be one of those kids, even though you become an adult, you realize everyone yearned because everyone thought they weren't part of the crowd.
Right.
So what that means as parents is we have to beef up our conversations with our children and have more explicit and intentional conversations that you would normally have about disappointment, about being polite, about just the rules of being kind in society.
Mm-hmm.
But technology has amplified everything. So I think as adults, we have to be far more intentional about what comes along with the power of a phone or a device.
Yeah.
And it's the same feelings. Most of the times they're the same feelings we felt that every 7th and 8th grader feels, but we need to be more on top of it. We need to model it, just like and I know your children are at the younger stage compared to mine, but you have to teach your boys how to put out your hand. When they say hello, you say hello to Mr. Murphy.
Right.
Mr. Murphy is saying hello to you, right?
Yeah.
I remember that age, right? I know how old your boys are, but I can just remember, no, Madison, you say thank you.
Right.
Or the first time they eat at someone's house, you don't say you don't eat Brussels sprouts. You take Brussels sprouts on your plate and you say thank you, and you try a little bite, and that's it. Those are the things as parents that we do, or we should be doing and modeling. But in the middle school now, we have to be more attentive and more intentional about the feelings, because now the feelings are ramped up, and this feeling of being isolated, this fear of being alone, this feeling of not being accepted, which impacts, of course, one's mental health. We need to be diligent in knowing that. And so for me, it's about being on top of the conversations, being intentional, continue to monitor it, continue to talk about right and wrong uses of it.
Right.
And a little snooping probably doesn't hurt.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's interesting what you said, about like not getting invited to the bat mitzvah, or, whatever it is, the sweet 16, whatever party is that weekend. Because as a parent, like, I'm a big proponent of, like, yes, we need to let them fail and learn what that's like, or we need to let them, they're not going to get invited to every event in life. And that is a good lesson to learn. But at the same time, I think there's like this compassion that needs to be there too, because, and I say this as myself, because I tend to forget this sometimes, but like, your child might be so upset that they weren't invited to that event. And I remember somebody told me once when I was in like the middle of potty training haze and it was just not going well, and I was so upset about it. And they were like, this is nothing. Like, in parenthood, this is literally nothing. You're going to look back at this in 5-10 years and be like, that was nothing. But that didn't make me feel any better, because at the time, that was everything. That was my life. My life was potty training, and it was not going well, and we were failing. And so I think it's a balance, it's a balance of, like, yes, learning that lesson, but at the same time, like, having compassion for them and understanding, like, this is hard. And at this moment in their lives, this is a big deal. And yes, they might look back in 5-10 years and be like, who cares if I was invited to Johnny's bat mitzvah or bar mitzvah? But at that moment, that was a big deal for them. So
I agree, especially around that age, and you know,
yeah.
someone who's worked in a middle school, and that's a crucial age of self-confidence and self-awareness. And it
Mhm.
is a big deal.
Right.
And we need to be understanding of that's how someone feels.
Right. Exactly.
And that's one of the problems with, there are many, with technology, that sometimes that empathy can't be transmitted through a text
Right.
or an Instagram post or a Facebook post. And
Right.
that's why, as the adults, and this is why I'm getting a little bit more concerned, because now the young parents are the Facebook generation. You know,
Mhm.
I'm so old that none of this existed growing up, thank God.
Right.
I don't know if I would be a superintendent if it existed back then, Carly, but I do think we have to understand that there's still the age appropriate feelings of being disappointed or being hurt that are just appropriate for 11, 12, 13, 14-year-olds.
Right.
And that's a great point, that we do have to show compassion. I'll take it a step further. Maybe we need to rethink the oversharing we do as parents of our kids and
Yeah.
our kids' successes, right?
Yeah.
You know, maybe we need to think about that ourselves. How does that play out? How is that going to make someone feel if they see that post or that text?
Right.
That they weren't invited. I wasn't invited to the girls' weekend, or I wasn't invited to the big wedding. So that
Mhm.
it adds a lot of complexities. So I think gone are the days of let's postpone it as long as we can, because no one listened to me 9 years ago. Everyone has one.
Mhm.
But I don't think we're there yet, where we know how to deal with this as parents in the right way. We're
Yeah.
still learning how to parent with these in our kids' hands. And that makes me very, very nervous.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, my son is 7 and he already knows how to do like certain things technology wise that I don't understand. So I'm like, you're
And
not
there's a lot of good that
something that
comes
I
out
don't
of it,
even know how to work.
right? There's a lot of good that can come out of it. The mental health field is learning so much. You have the crisis text line.
Yeah.
You have wonderful apps. So it's not without its benefits, but
Sure.
for parents in that sweet spot, we're learning along the way how
Right.
to work and how to raise our kids. And this is something that we haven't mastered yet in the parenting world. So
Right.
I just urge every parent to be intentional, to model, behaviors regardless of the phone, but model kindness.
Mhm.
And then what does that look like when you're posting something or texting something? It's a vernacular that we didn't grow up with, so we're not great at parenting with it yet.
Of course. And it's constantly evolving. I mean, even when Madison was going through it, like Instagram was new then. And that was only 7 years ago. And now it's like we have TikTok and Snapchat, and like there's just, it seems like there's a new one every day. So it's constantly changing.
And it's tough. And I'll tell you where it's really tough. Going from senior year of high school to freshman year of college,
Yes.
I have found that social media has really made the transition very difficult for seniors, because
In what way?
because everyone thinks freshman year looks great, right?
Right.
I'm pledging, I'm rushing a sorority, I'm pledging a fraternity, I'm at the Alabama game, I'm at the Clemson whatever game. It
Yeah.
just looks great. But going from senior year to freshman year in high school, freshman year of college, it is challenging.
Yeah.
And I've been through it once, and I'm prepping for it again. And we're continually talking to our daughter to say, what you see on Instagram doesn't necessarily tell the story. They're not posting when they're alone. They're not posting where they have to make new friends.
Right.
the
It's
king
the
of,
highlights of their life. That's
yeah.
exactly what it is. So,
And that makes me very nervous.
Right. And that's exactly what Madison went through. She was constantly looking at Instagram and Facebook and saw all of her friends from home at college and thought they were having these amazing, perfect college experiences. And they were struggling too, but everyone was too scared to talk about it at the time. So we've
got to break down that. We have to break down that stigma about
right.
talking about freshman year and how difficult it is.
Yes. Yeah. So some good information though. Perfect segue into my next question. Transitions, as we know, can be hard. Especially like these transitional grades. It can be kindergarten, it can be middle school, it can be high school, it can be college. But what's some advice that you have for these kids going into a transitional grade that have fear or anxiety over it? Are there tools or resources that you specifically use in Ramsey that make these transitions easier on these kids?
Now, transitions are tough, and I think there are some commonalities commonalities from the grade levels, and then there's some differences on the grade level as well. I think something that I try to tell every parent who is facing a tough transition, and that is try to connect to an adult early on, someone that you feel safe that you can talk to. So as expected, this year's transition for freshmen was the toughest in all my years as being a superintendent. It didn't surprise me because of the last 24 months facing, with COVID. But I can tell you just from the data that I'm getting back, it was the toughest year of transitioning. What I tell parents is the sooner they get up there and make a connection with what I call an adult or someone in college, they're all adults, but someone who has been there, an RA, a counselor, a professor, and an advisor. And when you establish that relationship, I tell them they may not go to that person and say, Dr. Murphy, I know you're my professor, but I want to talk about my mental health. We have to model for these seniors. No, go talk to them about school. Go talk to them about class and establish that relationship, that person that can help you on campus when you're feeling anxious. Colleges, I think, are, I don't know this as a fact, but my feeling based on my own daughter's experience and kids is they're way behind in reacting to the mental health crisis of young adults.
Yeah.
The backlog, the wait time for college freshmen, the last time I saw a study was weeks. Now, that's really alarming to me. That's truly alarming as a parent, because when they're home, they have mom and dad, hopefully, that can help bridge the gap if I can't get them to see a counselor in the next 6 to,
Right.
But in college, mom and dad who would have bridged the gap aren't there. And there's no one to talk to. And you can text all you want to mom and dad. I make it a point to hear my daughter's voice once a week. And not obviously, she has a much different relationship with mom, who I think it's more frequent about clothes and money. And rightfully so. But in college, if they can have another, I'm going to call it a safe person, a coach, someone who works at the library,
Yeah.
Just so when I'm feeling anxious, as parents, you're rubbing Hayes's back when he doesn't feel well, right? Hayes, you're going to be okay. You got a cold, just go to bed, and you rub his back. That's what we do as parents, even when they're 17 and 18 years old. But at college, we're not there. So I think colleges have to step up their game big time.
I
They
agree.
need adult role models. They need greater connections. They need to force the relationship a lot more than what they do. They
Right.
also need to increase the number of counselors they have. They could triple them, and I don't think it would be enough, in my
I
opinion.
know.
So I tell high school seniors, try to get up there and just build a relationship. It doesn't have to be about mental health. It could just be someone who can help ground you. That's not a technical word, but to ground you. And I would say that's very similar in the other transitions, that in the summers, if you have an 8th grader going to the high school,
Mm-hmm.
to try to find a high school student that they could just hang out with for a little bit. So when they see them in the hallway, they can give them a nod, and they can reassure that 8th grader that everything is going to be okay.
Yeah. And I mean, to that point too, there's like these peer-to-peer groups that I think are forming on a lot of college campuses, because they realize that those services aren't there for them. Those counselors are telling them, unfortunately, they have to wait 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever it might be. And so these peer-run and peer-led groups are so great, because it's showing you that as much as it might not be somebody who's older or wiser, or even a counselor or psychiatrist, whoever, it is somebody who's at the same level as you, who's going through it with you. And I think that's something huge too, to be like, you're not alone in this. I'm going through it too, and it's hard for me too, and I'm struggling too. So you're not alone. And I think that's a huge part of it, because I know Madison struggled with that so much, thinking like she was the only person who didn't love
Yes.
college. She was the only person that felt different, and was the only person that was having a hard time. So I think that those groups are great. They might not be the only thing that you need, but they're a good starting point.
That's such an excellent point, because my daughter, once she made her college decision, got on Facebook, was not, because she's not of the Facebook generation, but and got a core group of kids in this area. And all of June, July, and August, they would meet up in different parts of the tri-state area. I'm not talking about Ridgewood or Ramsey, but in this area. And she did go in with a little bit of a posse that,
Right.
And some of them are still friends now, and some are, good friends now, and some aren't. But
Right.
there's a benefit of technology that we have to give a shout out for, right?
Right, exactly.
When I went to college, first of all, I was the last of the Murphys. I got the keys to the old Tercel. My dad was like, I'm not driving anymore to college. I drove myself to college, unpacked myself, didn't know my roommate, had payphones, and got through it. But that's not a healthy way to do it. So you're right. The power of the posse is really something that I think more and more kids are doing that. I don't know if it's as structured as it could be, but I think more and more are doing that. And you're right. What your Madison felt is what my Madison felt her freshman year too. But she had a group to talk to about that.
Right. Well, this has been wonderful. But I mean, overall, if somebody watched this video, this interview, this podcast, and whether that's a parent or a student or whoever it might be, what is the one thing you really want them to take away from this?
You're not alone. We all have, to some varying degrees, the same feelings.
Yeah.
And I know it could feel embarrassing and isolating or humiliating at times, but we're all, I think human beings are very fragile beings. And what I would say is reach out. reach out to someone, and it may not necessarily be your best friend because you, at that point, you might be too embarrassed to talk about it. But in today's day and age, there are so many great people out there. Pick up the phone and call Carly, call myself, and just say, I need to talk this out with you. Can you help point me in the direction? You're not alone.
Yeah.
You're simply not alone. And I know this is a difficult time in our nation where that intersection of politics, culture, and COVID has created some really unkindness out there. But in my heart of hearts, and you know this, Carly, about me, I believe most people are kind. And I really do think the tide is going to turn. So if you're feeling like that, there are kind people out there.
Yeah.
And I just, the hardest thing is that first step. It's like getting on the Peloton. The hardest thing is I'm going to get on the bike. And once you get on the bike, you can do it.
Yeah.
I can't, but once you get on the bike, you can do it. I heard that's what the Peloton does. But I would say to everyone out there, you're not alone. There are people there. I know Carly will answer your call. I will answer your call. Wes Bergen will answer your call. No judgment. And, and just know that there's really, really good people out there, especially in our area.
Yeah, I agree. And you're one of them. So Thank you so much.
Thank you, Carly.
So I just have like these fun little questions that I ask at the end of every episode, just so we can get to know you as a person a little bit better. So kind of fill in the blank at the end, if you will. I can't go a day without
my dogs.
Oh, your dogs. What kind of dogs?
They're both rescue dogs, and one's a German Rottweiler mix, about 90 pounds. And then we have this tiny Chihuahua mix with big ears. It's Mutt and Jeff, they look like. And, we're pet lovers. So I think pets, it's just love.
They're calming.
They just give you love, all the time. So if I come back from a rough board meeting, they're there. And, so.
I always tell my kids my dog is my best child because he never talks back to me. So
I hope my daughters won't watch this. I love you guys too.
He can't live a day without you guys either, but the dogs, they're up there.
Oh, I'm going to get some for that.
Well, here's the next question. Life is better with?
The three women in my life.
There you go.
My wife, Megan, who's a Ramsey graduate. She's absolutely, in all sincerity, my best friend in the world. She allows me to do all these things. And my two daughters. Yeah. So life is better with them, without a doubt.
Wonderful. And while you're young, you should
take risks. And I'm not talking about behavioral risks.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not talking about that. But what I'm talking about is if you see a girl on the other side and you want to ask her to dance, ask her to dance.
Yeah.
That's the type of risk I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So
career risks, those kind of risks. I'm learning that as I get older too, if not now, when? So like it.
Yeah.
And then finally, what the world needs now is
a little bit more patience and understanding of each other. We're all feeling uptight. And whether or not we can express it properly. But I do think overall people are good. I think I really do believe in goodness. And I think everyone just needs a little bit more patience with each other, a little bit more understanding with each other.
Right.
And
especially this area too. I tend to find that, we're in this right outside New York City. We're all about the hustle and bustle and getting things done and fast pace, and patience is, it's a virtue and it's something to be rewarded and something to really value. So I get
Yeah, right. We're flawed human beings.
Mhm.
And right now, because we're kind of uptight and tightly wound as a society, and I understand why, politics, COVID,
Mhm.
culturally, we're at an intersection, but just a little bit more patience, a little bit more understanding, a little bit more kindness would, I think, go a long way to help each other.
Totally. I love it. Well, I can't thank you enough for being here with me tonight. I could talk to you for hours. You have such wisdom and you're doing such great things in Ramsey. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Carly, for having me.
Okay, and that's our show for tonight, guys. So we release on Mondays and we'll look forward to the next one. But if you have any questions for us, leave it in the comments. You can always check out West Bergen. I will link their website when I post this video as well. So thank you so much, Dr. Murphy.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.